Thank you so much for joining me at K Warner Studio. Today we have 10 Cards 1 Kit, Love from Lizi, January 2018 Card Kit video. Card 1. This kit had the alphabet in wood veneer pieces. I took the W, I, and S, H to spell wish out of the bag of embellishments and colored them with oxide inks. I also used a wood veneer piece in the shape of a balloon bouquet and colored the balloons with different color embossing patterns. To set this, I used a clear embossing powder as well as a clear embossing powder on the wood veneer pieces and heat those up so we have a nice shine and all of the ink is set and dry. With a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock, I blended antique linen oxide ink with a gradient color, making sure to have it darker at the bottom, lighter towards the top. I sprinkled some water with the disperse sprayer, whipped up the water with some paper towel, and heated it with a heat tool. Once this was dry and cool, I cut it into the card front. With a piece of double-sided adhesive, I placed a small strip in the top center of the card and sprinkled some Nouveau sparkle dust on top and pushing that sparkle dust into the adhesive with a Teflon bone folder. Once I had that secured and all of the extra poured off and back into the bottle, I was ready to further decorate. With a piece of black and white striped washi tape, I applied that over a white scrap of cardstock. Upon a star was embossed with a detail white embossing pattern on black cardstock and laid upon the washi tape piece of paper. These two were attached to just a smidge of the glimmer dust peeking out from underneath. Wish was spelled out across a die-cut vanilla cardstock, placing the balloon bouquet above the letter I. I wanted to bring the stripes from underneath upon a star into another spot on the card front, so I laid the washi tape along the bottom of white cardstock, placed the wish panel on top, and then attached black foam to both portions of the card front. I decided to bring this into the inside too, so the inside panel had a piece of the black and white washi tape applied to the bottom. Happy Birthday was cut with white cardstock with a die, and then Distress ink was applied to the top of Happy and the bottom of Birthday. I then took a stamp from the stamp set that said Dream Big Little One and stamped that along the left-hand side of the inside panel. That was attached to the card base, and an assortment of star sequins were attached. This was also part of the sequence bag. The card front panel was attached to the card base with a large clear gem to the eye, top of the eye. And that finishes card number 1. And here's a look at the card. On to card number 2. The letters were used again to spell the word party. Regular Distress ink was dabbed onto each letter, using different colors for every letter in the word. At times I had to let it dry a little bit and then re-stamp the ink on top. These also had to be heat set with the heat gun, being careful not to get too close or to keep the heat on too long. I decided to take a twisted citron and lemonade and blend the inks on a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock, having the twisted citron more towards the bottom and then the twisted lemonade working its way up to the top. This was spritzed with water with the distress sprayer. And the water was wicked up with paper towel, and then heat was applied with a heat gun. I used a word stamp and stamped "You're Invited" with black ink along the right-hand bottom and attached the letters with Nouveau liquid adhesive. Once I had the letters down, I used a ruler to bump the letters to keep them all straight. A piece of colorful striped cardstock, which was included in the kit, was added to the bottom of the party panel. This panel was then trimmed and attached to black mirror cardstock that was in a Love from Lizi kit previously in the last few months. This was cut to fit so that it had a really tiny border around the outside of the panel. This was then attached to the card front, and that finishes this card. Card number 3. The girl image from the stamp set was stamped onto white cardstock that was from the kit and colored with Copic markers. This cardstock was then cut into 3 frames, one of which is being trimmed with the little girl image, and the other 2 are attached together so that the frame has a little more stability. A spellbinder's die, which cut ruffles, was used to cut vellum, and a stitch was run down the center of this. The tips of the ruffle were dipped in the picked raspberry distress ink, and the raspberry distressed ink was added to the center of a white panel. Once the ink was applied, with just enough to show through the spellbinder grill that was cut from the mother of pearl card panel from a kit back, with the white vellum attached to the bottom to give a lacy feel. Once I was happy with this, a piece of gold metallic ribbon was applied over the stitch seam. Versamark watermark ink went around the perimeter of the frame, making sure to get every little bit of the nooks and crannies so that the antique gold Nouveau embossing powder would really cover all of it. Because it is a bumpy surface, double-sided tape was attached to the complete back of the little girl image that was cut previously and attached to the center of the frame. This was then attached to the spellbinder grill that was cut out of the front of this mother of pearl card panel, and with the ribbon and the vellum on the bottom. It'd be nice for a tween. To work on the inside panel, I attached a narrow double-sided adhesive to the ribbon, and then this ribbon was attached to the bottom of the inside card panel. Trimming off the edges, not in a blunt cut, so when it's bent over it can be adhered nicely. A piece of double-sided tape was run down the scored edge of the card, and then a nice varied pink cardstock that was from the kit was cut into a narrow strip, and this was applied over the double-sided tape that ran down the score mark in the center of the card. A piece of vellum was cut to fit inside the card. The Versamark watermark ink was run down the length of that panel, just on the one side, with the same Nouveau Antique Gold embossing powder added just to that one marking that was made with the watermark ink. You have to work it in because you want to get both sides of that paper. Heat your heating tool up before you use it, and it takes less than 11 seconds to heat that. You don't want to overwork it because you'll scorch the vellum, and that is applied along the inside of that pink spine. So any message you write won't be available and evident to anybody that looks at the card. Then that's the inside. And that finishes this card. Card number 4. The vanilla cardstock and a panel was cut from the cardstock in the kit. This panel was cut from the 12 by 12 sheet, and then the X-Acto knife is coming around the scalloped edges so that we can take the whole image out and leave the stripes. Now I'm going to fit that back in to where I've taken it out, so I'm adding some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive to a piece of fun foam. And this is going to fit brilliantly on the portion that was cut out, and just apply a little bit of pressure to that so that the glue adheres to the paper. This 6 by 6 piece of paper was cut into a wide stripe. The stripe paper that the image was cut out of was placed onto a green background. And the original scalloped image had glue attached to the back of the fun foam, and that was just placed in exactly where it was taken out of. The fun foam adds lots of dimension, but not enough that it's too high up off of the card. The corners were rounded on the green piece. The stripes of crayons was added down the center, as well as 2 peel-offs, one on each side, and a piece of ivory ribbon. The little panel that we rounded the corners was attached to the center of the crayon strip. The peel-offs were trimmed down, and it just adds enough sparkle that it brings your attention to run down the length of the card. The front panel was attached to the card base, making sure to apply adhesive onto that ribbon so that the top is down securely and the ribbon won't force the two to come apart later on. Now that the front's complete, we'll work on the inside panel, and we'll use the Dream Big sticker from the 12 by 12 sticker sheet and apply that to the bottom of the inside panel. The inside panel is now adhered to the inside of the card, and that completes this card. On to card number 5. The 6 by 6 piece of paper was taken from the 6 by 6 paper stack, and various stars from a star die was used to cut the images out, and then this star-filled piece of paper was attached to the silver mirror card. A tree was cut using white cardstock, and distress inks were used to shade it. The owl was cut out of one of the panels and distressed with distress ink. The tree branch was attached to the front of the card. Various star sequins were attached from the sequin mix. I also have the stars on their own, so I use them, but they are in the mix. And wanting to add different textures to this card, they're spread throughout, as well as the inside portion too. So this says, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, do you know how loved you are?" And that is applied to the inside of the card. The outside of the card is attached. A seed bead was added to the nose. Little wings were attached to the front with some sparkle pen. And that finishes this card. And now we're on to card number 6. I took 2 of the same panels, one in cardstock and one in vellum, and used them for this card. Grass was also cut from a die, and a couple of the stickers were used from the 12 by 12. The image of a cat playing a fiddle was in the speech bubble, and the word cutie pie stencil was sticker was also used. These are cardstock stickers. I used a narrow tape, dimensional tape, and went around the perimeter of the vellum. It's double back, so I removed the backing and then applied that directly over the cardstock piece. I didn't apply sequin or beads or anything, just to give it some dimension and an airy feel. I rounded the corners with a corner chomper, and then I'm attaching some double-sided tape to the bottom part of the grass pieces, making sure not to go up too far on the grass because I wanted the pieces of grass to be able to move and be scrunched up a little bit. After I applied 2 layers of the grass, I glued the top window portion onto a card panel. It's a smaller panel than the card. I attached cutie pie along the right hand side and then attached that to the card base and then rounded the corners on the whole card. And that completes this card. Card number 7. The stamp set was used, stamping the boy in the upper right hand side and the girl in the lower left hand side. Masks were applied and a scene was built using a bookshelf and books, a desk lamp, a trash can, and some paper balls. The E-colors and the Copic markers were used for the bookshelf, and the cool grays were used for the desk lamp and the trash can. Blues and greens were used on the books, and then a yellow, real pale yellow was used. So the Y's were used on the lamp, the light that the lamp was casting. The bottom of the flooring was done with cool and warm grays. A frame was cut. Window sheet was put on the back of it so that it looked more like a window. And this was placed over the Copic colored images. A panel was cut down to be ornate, and it says "Boys will be boys," and that was placed on the inside of the card, and the outside is finished. That completes that card. Card number 8. The same thing was done in that the vellum piece and the cardstock piece were both cut. Pink cardstock that was in the kit was trimmed down to fit the cardstock frame that was placed over the foam frame. These two were then attached to the pink, while the graphite shimmer paper was cut to a card front and applied to the front of the card. The vellum and cardstock foam pieces were applied to the front, and then I went through my punches and found a couple that did small little flowers, and I punched those out from the same pink cardstock and attached them to the front of the vellum piece to cover the flower print that was on the front of the vellum. A little bit of glossy accents went to the center so that one of the very small sequins from the sequin mix could be attached. And once this was dry and set, Nouveau drops were added to the centers. This matched the yellow in the card stock in the card, and the color is called dandelion yellow, and that was put in both centers of the small flowers. Pink ribbon from the kit was attached to the bottom as well. And that completes this card. And now we're on to card number 9. 6x6 paper from the paper stack was cut to make a card panel, and this panel was attached to an A2 card base, to the front of the A2 card base. And the last card, the cardstock center that said "You are in love with the vellum," that piece underneath was cut out, and this uses that piece in the front. On the front of this card, a piece of fun foam was attached to the back to give dimension. White ribbon from the embellishment bag was tied along the side, and it was just tied into a knot. An inside panel was attached to the inside of this card base, as well as another panel to cover the ribbon when you opened it up on the inside. The same strip of paper that was used on the front panel was carried on into the inside. An inside strip was attached to the bottom, and then various sequins from the sequin mix were attached to the front of the card to form a triangle. Once the sequins were set, Nouveau crystal drops, and dandelion yellow were attached to the centers over the hole and the sequins. And that completes this card. Card number 10. Card number 10 is Dream Big. There was a panel in the 12 by 12 panels, so I've cut that apart, bringing out the little punches and the different flowers that the punches can cut. I had a look at those again and decided I would use a few. I used 2 large ones and 1 smaller one. I kept them in white because it was a daisy on the front of the card. And I formed them with my tonic flower maker kit. Attaching them directly over the flower, the daisy that's on the front, making sure that the petals are a little staggered to add fullness and depth to the flower. 3 is all you really needed. Makes a beautiful little addition to the card. A tiny butterfly was cut from a punch and colored with picked raspberry distress ink and applied to the front of the card. Additional pieces were added to the daisies on the front and inside of the card, as well as sequin to the centers of the flowers. The sequin was from the sequin mix that was part of the kit. While that's set, I went on to the butterfly and attached black thread through the center, and I applied 2 small beads on top of the black thread. Nouveau crystal drops and dandelion were attached to the center of each of the flowers. The antenna was trimmed, and the front panel was attached to the green cardstock that would complete the front panel. Ink blended grass was attached to the bottom of the inside card, as well as the flower. The inside portion of the card was attached to the inside of the card base. A different kind of flower was cut out from punches and colored with a lemon lime distress ink along the edges. The petals of the flowers were shaped and attached to the flower on the inside of the card. 3 pieces were used for this flower. A sequin was attached. And then the dandelion crystal drops were in the center as well. This has to set for quite a while before it's folded or pressed or anything. Nouveau drops. So the front panel is now complete, and it is attached to the front of the card. And that completes this card. And I was having so much fun that I made 11 cards instead of 10. So I took a piece of the pattern paper and cut it with a die to have scallop edging around the outside. And this too had a cardstock card and a vellum card, so I decided to make a shaker, applying the narrow foam adhesive around the perimeter of the vellum piece, hit it just behind the silver metallic border, using different colored seed weeds that match the colors of the apples on the front of the vellum piece. Once I had the backing all off, I attached the cardstock piece that was exactly the same as the front vellum piece. My sticker that I need to use is attached to the glue there, and I put the glue on the back of the shaker portion and then attach that to the front of the card base over the original panel that was cut. And "You're the apple of my eye" sticker was attached to the bottom. I then moved on to the inside panel with the same grass die cuts that I had to the last card. I colored the bottom to make it more vibrant on the bottom. I even punched out an apple and applied the different colors to that as well, and I attached that to the inside of the card. So "You're the apple of my eye," and then there's an apple on the inside, and that completes this card. So that is card number 10, and here's the lineup of all the cards that were shown in this video today. I hope you enjoyed it and you've got some inspiration. And if you're interested in Lizi's kits or any information about her shop, it will be in the Show More section below. Thank you so much for watching and taking time out of your very busy day to spend it with me. Bye-bye.